Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Real Estate with Ryan. So excited to be back with you on a Saturday, talking our favorite topic, real estate. Of course, the summer is rolling through the weeks, months, and before you know it, kiddos will be back to school. Hope everybody had an amazing 4th of July holiday. I know a lot of people have been on breaks, vacation. I know we were as well. And so happy to get back into the swing of it. Housing market has a lot of news. We're going to cover that and so much more today. But as always, if you're tuning in for the first time, my name is Ryan Coleman, owner, founder of Hometown Realty, and been doing real estate 28 years. We do this little show every Saturday, Real Estate with Ryan. Talk about East Tennessee housing market. Really how it's one of the best housing markets. Really? You say right now? Is it? I still think it is, and we'll talk about that. 14 years running, why real estate is still one of the strongest investments that you can make out there. So real estate has been strong, and East Tennessee continues to grow. No matter if you're in Loudoun, Knox County, Anderson, Sevier, you name it, growth we're seeing across East Tennessee is still picking up. But of course, as always, we've got some wars, we got things going on, we got rates, we got some news to talk about. So we'll get in that. And thank you for tuning in. And if you're tuning in for the first time, you can catch us every Saturday, News Talk 98.7, 1 o'clock. Catch us right there on the radio there. Also, our partners, Talk Radio 92.3 FM, AM 760, out there at 11 a.m. So 92.3 FM at 11 a.m. Catch us on their Facebook page as well. Of course, we're streaming everywhere, social media, you name it. YouTube, X. What else are we on? Spotify, iTunes, Google, you name it. We got you covered. So in case you missed the show or couldn't tune in with me on the radio, you can always catch a replay. So before we get going, we got some congrats, some new listings. Been very busy. A lot of activity going on in the marketplace on our end. Brand new listing that we listed is 1380 Skiview Drive. Beautiful condo in Gatlinburg. Make sure you check that property out. 2103 is the unit. New listing over on Williamsburg Drive in Lenoir City, all brick house, beautiful custom, one level with a loft. Make sure you check that out. The floors are immaculate, large lot, over a half acre. I think it's 0.69 to be exact, so make sure you check that property. Should be going live on Monday. 1931 Massachusetts Avenue, new listing pop out there. 1941 Anderson Way, new listing in Sevier County. Check that out. And congrats to our great seller out there on Big Springs Drive. Went under contract, and our great sellers out in Red Hill, 2248 Red Hill Road in Andersonville, just closed, and congrats to them. I think we got another one that is scheduled to close on Monday on Twilight Boulevard. Congrats to them as well. Try to squeeze that in on this show. So a lot of things going on. Hope everybody's doing well. Hard to believe that this summer is flying by so fast. It seems like, if you're like me, it was a blink of an eye. It was May, now it's June. Speaking of June, we got some numbers that came out on the June housing market. U.S. single-family housing starts fall building permits to the lowest it's been in 10 months. With the third straight month in June, permits of future construction dropped to the lowest level in 10 months, weighed by higher mortgage rates and the glut of unsold new homes on the market. Home builders are being constrained by rising costs, land, and material. Builders say it would take a lot longer in the housing market if the legislation would have an Affordability Act and pass in Congress. Now, that recently just came out a couple of days ago, that the new Affordability Act, we'll dive into that the next show, but there's supposed to be some relief with this act that's come through. There's a lot into it, and it was unanimously passed by both the Democrats and Republicans. Hard to believe those guys can come to agreement on anything, but they did, which is going to be good for the housing market. I think some of the highlights of that is, I think we saw our mayor come online and talk about how in Knoxville, some of the lots that we have out there that are smaller lots, but still could be great affordable lots for new construction. There's been a lot of restrictions on property lines, setbacks, etc., and they've made those lots not buildable. And so a lot of lots sit in the city and in the county by certain zoning regulations and things like that. So I think some of that act has lifted some of those restrictions, and so that's pretty exciting to see coming forward. And some other things, I think one of the biggest things we've seen in the last couple of years with the housing market, right, guys, is big corporate entities coming in and buying. I'll give you a perfect example. Hardin Valley was a hot area, right? One whole street that we have, most people would not know, all brand new construction is corporately owned, and they're all rentals. So we have BlackRock and people like that, entities that come in and they buy these single-family homes to control the marketplace. And so there's been a ban on that. So that should be good news for the housing market, especially here in East Tennessee, that opportunity where we're not competing with corporate giants for our forever home. And a lot of those where the market was coming very strong, as you remember, we have a little couple that we would want to show them the home, and it met all their needs. It had the backyard, perfect floor plan, kitchen had the space, and before you know it, another offer on the table. No inspection, cash, close in a couple weeks. Was the seller, you can't fault them for not taking that deal. Who wouldn't? But those buyers were beating out regular home buyers on a routine basis. And so a lot of people got frustrated and actually rented and moved out of the housing market. So that's one of the challenges that we see when the market does get more favorable and stronger, that the big corporate giants come in and snatch those up. So we'll find out more with Real Estate with Ryan on a future show. We'll dive into what was passed, what's exactly in the act. But those are some of the highlights that I know we have there. Some of the permits in new construction, single-family homes dropped 2.4% last month, which is a rate of 871,000 units, the lowest since August of 2025. So, that being said, of course, the federal rates were just released here. 30-year fixed mortgage has increased a couple points, 60 basis points, to an 11-month high of 6.55. A lot of that has to do with war. Now we're back in war, and there's bombs and all that different stuff going on with oil crisis and things like that. So a lot of that has to do with the housing market and where we see that, and that's affordability. Number one factor that we're facing in housing and across the U.S., no matter what housing market you're in, is affordability. In some areas, like Nashville, Knoxville, and some areas across the country have risen dramatically, and they've done it within a couple years. I think reports were out that Knoxville as a whole, over a couple-year period, year-over-year return, had one of the stronger, I think we're in the top 10, appreciations over year. Go figure, while we just had the taxes that came out here locally, right? Talking about raising the taxes or raising tax assessments, right? That's just the groundwork for that the bill's in the mail. It's coming, right? So that's going to happen. We know it. We can sugarcoat it, but those are the things that are coming in. So, I think what we're seeing in the housing market right now is one of the biggest challenges is what? I had a great client that we were talking to, and he said, the market now is $1 million above, not seeing as much challenges. Stock market is usually tied into the higher end. Still price conscious, though. We still have some listings out there that if it's not priced right and the market's not responding, right, and we don't have the right activity that we need, then there's adjustments that we're seeing need to be made. But for a whole, our luxury market across the U.S., we're seeing doing pretty well. The stuff under $300,000, I would say that's doing a lot better than most. I say that's inventory that if supply and demand, there's just not enough of that inventory in the market, especially in our area, right? And that opportunity, so if it's priced right, it's affordable, it's moving. So we go 400 to say 800 price range. That's the move-up market. That's the market that a lot of people are in, and we're seeing some challenges. So keep that in mind. And that being said, most people, for selling today, one of the biggest challenges is I have a home to sell. So I'm selling that home. I've got to buy this home, and one of the biggest challenges there. We'll also talk a little bit more as we come up, not too far from the break. What do we expect for the second half of 2026? Hard to believe 2026. Half of the year is gone. But that being said, we'll talk about some encouraging signs, things that are on the housing market, and dive into that, what we expect in the fourth quarter. One of the biggest things we have in our area, a lot of relocations that come into our area. And then in the Smokies, we have a lot of people that are doing something called 1031s. So regardless of whether you're, buying an investment or not, a lot of these investments we're going to pay Uncle Sam on taxes, and we're not going to pay Uncle Sam any extra money than we need to. So that portion of the year helps us move a lot of inventory. We got a few minutes for a break. Make sure you stay with us. Second half, Real Estate with Ryan is coming back second half. Stay with us.
When speed matters, every second counts.
Wow, that was fast.
In real estate, speed is an advantage.
In football, speed is crucial.
In softball, speed is game-changing.
If you want your home sold fast,
Trust Ryan Coleman and his team at Hometown Realty for fast results.
Thanks, guys. Go Big Orange.
Hometown Realty is East Tennessee's #1 real estate group and a proud sponsor of the Vols.
I'm Ryan Coleman with Hometown Realty. The real estate market's changing every day. You need to know your home's value in today's market. Text your home address to 290-2290 for an instant, no obligation home evaluation. That's 865-290-2290. And remember, when you're ready to sell, we have a guaranteed sale program to get you in your next home stress-free. Trust your hometown experts. We've helped thousands of people just like you. All right, we're back at it. Second half, Real Estate with Ryan. Thank you for staying tuned. Always a lot to cover in this show in this short period of time, and thank you for staying with us. We're talking about real estate, East Tennessee. 14 years running, real estate is still America's favorite investment. Talking about that. So there's a lot, with the housing market, interest rates, builders reports not where we wanted to see. June was down about 5.4% year over year sales. It happens, right? It's going to happen. We're going to see it. There's a lot of new construction out there. New bill came out. There's going to be a lot of opportunities that I think will help builders across the country, especially inventory, building on lots that maybe are not where maybe the lots were affordable, but the lots wouldn't work on zoning. So those are opportunities I think will help moving forward. Let's talk about it in our show. Most importantly is, the investments do Americans really hold as solid investments? Stocks, golds, bonds, right? And it hasn't changed over 14 years. It's real estate. And this year the answer comes with even more conviction behind it. The new data shows that people aren't just saying home ownership is a smart move. They're feeling better about it than they have in a long time. Well, yeah, some people would say, well, Ryan, I don't feel too great about it. My house is on the market. It's not moving. I'm not feeling like it's the greatest ownership right this second. And I get that. Every year the Gallup asks Americans to name their best long-term investment. And for the 14th year, home ownership is ranked up there. That's why home ownership is so key to everybody, especially our first-time buyers. I know it seems challenging to our first-time buyers in the Knoxville housing market. It seems like that age is pushing up to the high 30s, almost 40 years old. And to some, it seems like that goal will never be obtainable. But to a lot, it is one of their largest investments. And that's not a fluke or a hot streak. 14 years beating out stocks. Owning a home has now long been considered the most reliable ways to build wealth. Now, a lot of people are renting right now. Some people are moving to rental. Some people are moving to an area they've never been here. And I think is probably one of the best moves you can do. If you're coming to an area and you don't know your area, it's one of the first things I ever did was we rent something. You want to know your areas. You want to know what's most important, schools, childcare, all that, hospitals. And so renting for a lot of people that are coming from out of state, what we're seeing. I don't know the area. You got to be comfortable in the area. You got to know market trends. If I'm coming from one state, maybe totally different here than our market. And it's hard. It's hard because our areas has experienced a lot of growth and appreciation. And it's hard. Some of the prices, when you do price shopping, go online, look around, look for a starter home. I really remember coming to East Tennessee that the value of a nice little 3-bedroom, 2-bath rancher, 1,500 square feet, maybe 1,400 square feet, you could find it in the twos. Somewhere in the twos, and it was a really nice property. Great area. Pride of ownership was very strong, but we're not finding that anymore. Those are far and few between. And so what to expect on home ownership and why that real estate still ranks there. 90% of people, home ownership is a valuable investment, and that's up from 79%. And 94% of people are saying owning a home ownership or owning a home period provides stability, and that's changed from 83%. It's more about it's less about the money, but it's more about security. For many homeowners, a home is more than just a place to sleep and store belongings. It's a reflection of who they are. Home ownership can help people build roots, relationships, and create a space that feels uniquely their own. Home ownership is big because, it's for a lot of people. We just sold, well, we're close to selling. We'll keep it like that. Close to selling, and moved a family member that was 45 years in the one property. And you go say, well, that's 45 years. Raised 2 kids, bunch of grandbabies, a lot of memories, a lot of challenging times, relationships. So homes become a lot more than just a structure. And obviously, the rise of interest rates recently, but the market in the last 4 or 5 years, you see your values increase. You almost look at it and say, well, it's almost like a piggy bank. But it's way more than that. Bottom line, for 14 straight years, Americans have called real estate the best long-term investment, and confidence in owning a home is on the rise, regardless of what, the news will tell you, the market will tell you. And I think one of the most important things, if you're young, if you're thinking about getting involved in home ownership, or you're getting newly married, maybe you've got a little one on the way, all these things are important. There's plenty of home ownership classes that are around to help you understand home ownership. We partner with Dave Ramsey. He's got a financial peace program that is very, very strong. They offer it at a lot of churches. I'm not sure if they offer it at ours. I think they do. But get with your local church. Financial peace is a really good way to go. It's not a push for Dave, but understanding your finances as a very young couple or early on. Maybe you're older. You got, maybe it's not early on. It doesn't matter where you're at in your life, but a good course like that, financial peace or something like that, that will structure you to understand how to save money, how to be efficient with your money, right? So you can save for a down payment, because obviously that down payment's getting larger, and not expected that the prices are going to, bottom out. There's some changes, but getting that down payment is key. Knowing your budget, knowing your credit. That's another key thing is we're doing some recent sales here, but getting your financial in order. They don't really teach us that in school. I don't know if you know that or not. I don't care if you go to college or, go to high school and graduate from high school. They teach you some stuff in college, but I think more specifically, some of these things they're just not out there. The tools are not out there. You got to kind of self-educate yourself on some of this. So, if your parents have owned a home, you want to talk to them as guidance. That's a great opportunity to do that. If we can help you any way, if you're buying, I can't tell you the number of first-time buyers that we've helped and walked around and bought their first home, and just cute as can be. So we'll be glad to walk you and give you the right tools to help you be successful. So when you're able to buy that home, you can see why it's one of the best decisions that you can make. So talking about that, we've got a lot to come on, talk about. I recently had a sale. It came up on a topic, and it's probably big on everybody. I don't want to spend too much on that. Then we'll talk about the end of where we expect 2026 to be and what to expect for the housing market locally. But if you're buying or selling a home, a lot of people either have title in their name or they put it in a trust. And so a lot of trusts are created for protection, right, from assets and things like that. But you want to make sure that when you're doing that, this isn't legal advice, but this is real estate advice. Make sure you get with a great attorney that does estate planning and things like that. But, make sure when you're selling property and it's in a trust, make sure there's two types of trust, revocable and non-revocable. And it simply means revocable means I can take it back. I can change it. Non-revocable means I can't. Once I put everything in the trust, it's there. So I see a lot of people when they're selling their home, or we have one we just listed yesterday, it's in a trust. We have to be very, very careful that just because it's in a trust doesn't mean that Medicare claims and state claims can affect the property. A lot of times, the state of Tennessee will do a search, and that if you have a trust and it's non-revocable, things like that, they could make claims on the property. So I can tell you moving forward, no matter what your age is, that had me really looking at stuff as well. Look at what you're putting into. Look at who you hire. That's why we do this show every week. If you want a good agent to help you in the housing market, we're here. Buying, selling, questions, investing, we've got you covered. But get a good attorney that does estate planning, because I'd hate to see you put a property, have some nursing care or assisted living or some bills that we think that are covered by Medicare or insurances, and they're not. And they come back and do a look-back period. There was a lady in Knoxville that had a $300,000 claim that they had no idea. And so the estate planning that they thought was right, and it wasn't right. And so make sure you take time and look at that. Review your trust. Review your documents, because we come across selling them. We don't get involved in that, but there is an importance of having that done. Where do I see the 2026 housing market and where we're projecting? It's all going to be depending on the energy and the rates. Keep an eye on that. I think we'll still see steady growth as we proceed towards the end of the year. We'll see our investments pick up some. And then, of course, it's the market. We'll have to make changes and responding to the market is what we've got today. Hope you've enjoyed the show. Thank you for spending time with me. Look forward to seeing you back next weekend with Real Estate with Ryan. Take care.